Alright guys, welcome back to Tony the Technician. You just saw me install my starter. As I stated at the end of my video, I'm moving on to the Harmonic balancer. Want to make sure it's in good condition, make sure everything's good. And when you go to install, you want to take the back ring of the Harmonic balancer, put a little bit of oil or grease on it for the inside and the outside, and then you'll press it on. They do make a Harmonic balancer installer. I do not have. I'm just using the bolt from my pulley, the pulley that actually mounts on the crank. I'm using that. What you're going to want to do is find some way to get the Harmonic balancer on there, and then most likely the bolt won't reach. I'm just using a block of wood, setting it up and tapping it with a hammer just until I get the Harmonic balancer deep enough for that bolt to reach, which I just did. Sorry I didn't videotape it. And then after that, it's pretty simple. You're just going to need your 5/8, I believe. Yeah, 5/8. And you're just going to crank it until you get it into position. But let me show you it. So just using a little mini hammer, that piece of wood up against the Harmonic balancer. Here's the bolt, which I have threaded in now. And this is the part that I'm talking about. You need to oil up because it's going into this seal. And you don't necessarily want it going in dry. And then on the inside of this ring as well. Now that I have it started, I just tapped it a few times. Now, as you can see, just by tightening this bolt, it is installing the Harmonic balancer. So it's a pretty easy process. Just take your time and it'll be no problem. If you guys have any questions about it, just leave a comment. I know this is a really short video, but just wanted to show you guys that this is what I am doing right now. I believe next I am going to install the water pump, which I might include into this video, but I am painting it right now and letting it dry because I need my water pump to match my block. So that's it for now. Stay tuned and I'll add in the water pump. Alright guys, welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel. So today, instead of doing the heads, which I would normally do at this stage, we aren't going to do that yet because I ordered some Permatex thread sealer with PTFE. It's good for the head bolts since the coolant flows through there and you don't want any leaks. But that hasn't came in yet, so today we're going to be working on installing the water pump pulley, and the crank pulley. I'll give you the torque specs on those. And that's the plan for today. So let me show you everything that you're going to need in order to complete this job. And even though my engine is out of the vehicle, installing the water pump, even if you have your engine in the vehicle, is going to be the same process minus a couple things like removing or moving your alternator, power steering, things like that. Since I don't have mine on the engine, it's going to be a little bit simpler for me. But anyways, it's still the same process as far as putting the water pump on. But let me get to showing you everything we'll need, and then we'll get started installing it. Okay, so first thing you need is to go to the fridge and get yourself a beer. As long as you're old enough, of course. But on a serious note, to get started, you're going to need a few things. Of course, your water pump. You can see I've painted mine. It's a pretty simple process. Just make sure if you do have this heater core hose neck installed, make sure to tape that off. Tape off the back where the gasket's going to go, and then make sure you plug this hole. Paint it, remove the tape. As you can tell, I've already done that. So our water pump is ready. The other main thing that you're going to need is get your gasket set out, pull out your 2 gaskets that you'll need for your water pump. So we got those ready. Next thing you're going to need is RTV for the gaskets, which is basically going to be the same process as the timing chain cover and the fuel pump block off plate, as I've shown you in my previous videos. And then for the sealer on the bolts, we're going to be using just gasket shellac because it is also good with coolant, water, steam, oil, all that kinds of stuff. The next thing you're going to need is dig out your bag with your water pump bolts, because you did organize all your bolts as you were disassembling your engine, and you kept them organized. So you pulled that out, you got your 4 bolts for your water pump. Mine are 9/16. Then you're going to have your 4 bolts for your water pump pulley if you don't have studs and nuts. I have just a bolt kit. And then you have your crank pulley. And then also your bag with your crank pulley bolts. One thing you're going to want to do is clean off all the bolts if you're reusing. These are fairly new. These ones need cleaned up still, so I will be doing that with just a wire brush and a rag. Another thing you're going to need is your torque wrench and your appropriate sockets in order for all these bolts to be mounted. What else will you need? I believe that's it. But we'll be using a 9/16 and an extension, because I don't want to go messing up my water pump. So those are the 2 things I'll need in order to install the water pump. Now, the torque specs for this water pump, or for a small block Chevy, and installing the water pump, is 30 foot-pounds. So you're going to set your torque wrench to 30 foot-pounds, and, well, actually, I would suggest, just like I've stated before when torquing things, you want to do it in 3 equal increments. So first do it hand tight, then set it at like 15 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever. And then once you get them torqued down to that, then move on to your final 30 foot-pounds. And then make sure to double check all of them. But let's get started. First, we're going to apply RTV to the block on both sides. Also, like this set, both gaskets are the same, but on the bottom of your water pump, this takes a long gasket, this takes a short one. So you can either just put RTV on just the part that's going to go on the water pump, or you can take a pair of scissors and you can cut the extra off so you don't just have a gasket hanging out the bottom of your water pump. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and trim this and get it fit right to the water pump. And then once we've applied our RTV to that, we'll also apply RTV to the gaskets, the side that's going to be pressed up against the water pump. We'll get those laid on and we'll get the water pump put on. But let me get this ready. Okay, so we've got our coat of RTV on both parts of the block, and then I went ahead and trimmed this gasket to fit the smaller side of the water pump, and then we coated both sides of the water pump where it will bolt up. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these on the water pump, and then we will bolt it to the block. But that's what I'm going to do right now. Give me 1 second. Okay guys, now that I got the gaskets on, it's just like the the timing chain cover. You'll just lay them on and then tap all the way around, make sure they're seated in line with the bolt holes, and then just make sure there's a good press on them. And now we're just gonna lay it on the block, lightly put the bolts in, make sure not only that your bolts are clean, but make sure you clean out the threads in your block. It's very important. You do not want coolant leaking out of the bolt holes. And before you install them, make sure to give the bolt a nice clean coat of shellac or Permatex thread sealer. Some people also use RTV. I don't really want to thread mine in with RTV because then things can break off. Chunks of RTV can break off and get into your engine. I don't like that. That's why I use either the shellac or the Permatex thread sealer. And I'm going to go ahead and coat my bolts now, and then we'll get it installed. Okay, so as you can see, I have the water pump mounted. It is not torqued down yet. I just have the bolts in hand tight. Didn't even use a ratchet, just made sure it's pressed up against there. You got a nice clean seal around the block and the water pump. There you go. Just make sure you don't get that on the head. I'll wipe that off. That's how it should look. Now we're going to go ahead and set the torque wrench to 15 foot-pounds, and I'll torque the bolts down, and then we'll move on to the 30 foot-pounds. Okay guys, so I just got these bolts torqued down to 15 foot-pounds. Now we're going to go ahead and set our torque wrench to 30 foot-pounds. Lock it in. Now you're going to go in a crisscross pattern and hit them at 30 foot-pounds. There's one. You want to do this nice and slow, because if you do it too fast, then you take the chance of over torquing it even though it's set at 30 foot-pounds. Another thing, when I give you guys torque specs, they're usually accurate. I have OCD pretty bad. I like to be organized. And when I'm looking up specs like that, if I don't have it in the book, then I will look it up online. I will not just give you some bullshit torque specs. Another thing that I kind of find myself doing, which isn't a bad thing, but I always double check after I've torqued everything to the appropriate foot-pounds. So here we've cleaned the holes, or the bolt holes. We've cleaned the bolts. We've installed our gaskets and RTB. We've installed the water pump, torqued it down to 30 foot-pounds. Everything's mounted and good to go. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and mount the water pump pulley, which are going to be set at 20 foot-pounds. It's not necessary. A lot of people just do them hand tight, you know, not super tight, not loose obviously, but a lot of people prefer 20 to 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to do 20 for these, and then we'll move on to the crankshaft pulley. Okay guys, so installing the water pump pulley, it's going to be this one right here. You have your 4 bolts, and then you'll have to get the appropriate socket for your water pump bolts if you're doing bolts instead of studs and nuts. Let me go ahead and get the right socket, and then we'll get this put on. We'll torque it down to 20 foot-pounds. Okay, so I just put the pulley on, and all I've done was just snug these up to where they stopped. Now I'm going to set my torque wrench to 10 foot-pounds and then 20 foot-pounds and torque that down. Not going to show it to you. It's pretty simple. 4 bolts. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do that. Okay, so I got the pulley torqued down. It is only set at 15 foot-pounds. Since you have the problem of a rotating pulley, it's pretty hard to hold and torque it down at the same time. So right now they're set at 15. They can be tightened once they're on, because I don't really have anything to hold it right now, and I don't want to take the chance of messing up all the paint and everything. So there you go. Water pump's installed, pulley's installed. Now we're going to start working on the crankshaft pulley. It's a pretty simple process, basically the same as the water pump pulley, except for the fact that you have the 3 that hold the pulley to the harmonic balancer, and then you're going to have your center bolt that actually holds not only the pulley to the harmonic balancer, but the harmonic balancer onto the crankshaft. And that's what keeps the harmonic balancer sealed up against this seal here and prevents it from leaking. Your torque specs are going to be 60 foot-pounds for your center bolt, and once again I believe the sides are 20. I will double check that before saying it's a fact, so let me go ahead and look that up. But I do know for a fact this center bolt is 60 foot-pounds. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually put the pulley up here and install your 3 bolts, because if you do the center bolt first, then you run the chance of the pulley not being lined up, and that'll just be a bitch. So just make sure you install the 3 bolts on the outside that hold the pulley to the harmonic balancer, and then we'll get started on the actual center bolt. Okay, so we have the crankshaft pulley mounted to the harmonic balancer. The 3 bolts are just snug right now. I did place 2 bolts in the back flex plate in order to keep the engine from turning while torquing these down. I'm going to torque these 3 bolts to 20 foot-pounds. Anywhere from 20 to 25 should be good. And the center bolt will be 60. I'm just going to snug these up to about 15 foot-pounds, get the center bolt torqued to 60, and then we'll go back and retighten these. Okay guys, so I do have my torque wrench set at 60 foot-pounds for the center bolt. I've already tightened up the 3 outer bolts to 15 foot-pounds. I'm going to tighten this down to 60, and then we'll go back and hit the smaller ones. First you got to switch out your sockets to your 5/8 if that's what your center bolt is. And then you'll torque it to 60 foot-pounds. Right now it's still pretty loose. Okay. There we go, we've hit 60 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to go back down to 20. Lock that in and finish torquing up these 3 outer bolts, 9/16. All right. But before I call it good, I am going to go back, hit this 60 one more time, and hit this 20 one more time, just to make sure everything's good to go. And that's about it. If you guys have any questions about installing the water pump, gaskets, any sealants that you should or should not use on certain parts of the engine, torque specs, if you guys have any trouble with any of that, please just let me know, comment below, like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Next video should be installing the heads as soon as I get that sealant in. Thank you guys so much.